HMCS Chicoutimi is a Victoria-class long-range diesel-electric hunter-killer submarine originally built and operated by the Royal Navy as HMS Upholder. It was built to perform covert shore missions and detect enemy vessels, equipped with an impressive armament system and substantial computing power. It measures 70 meters in length with a displacement of 2,540 tons. With its two Paxman Valenta diesel engines and GEC dual-armature electric motor, is capable of speeds of 12 knots surfaced and 20 knots submerged. Upholder came into service in 1990, but was decommissioned on the 29th of April 1994 as a financial measure following the end of the Cold War. The Upholder and her three sister submarines were declared surplus to requirements in 1994 and sold to the Canadian Navy in 1998. The Upholder was renamed HMCS Chicoutimi and was commissioned into Canadian Navy service in 2015. On the 4th of October 2004, HMCS Chicoutimi, on its maiden voyage, departed Faslane, Scotland, bound for Halifax, Nova Scotia. The following morning, while running on the surface of the North Atlantic, in rough seas about 110 nautical miles northwest of Sligo Island, a crew member discovered a defect in the vent valve of the submarine's conning tower upper hatch. With the sub preparing to make its first dive later that day, repairs were ordered. There were two options for carrying out the work: either run the submarine opened up with both the upper and lower hatches open, or close the lower hatch and effectively locking crewmen out of the submarine and working in a potentially hazardous area inside the fin. After observing the prevailing sea state, the Chicoutimi's commanding officer decided to leave both hatches open, a decision that played a key role in the disaster. Two crewmen ascended the conning tower to carry out the repairs, leaving both the conning tower upper hatch and lower hatch open. Just after 11 a.m., about 25 minutes into the vent valve repair, a massive wave caused seawater to surge under the casing and flow up inside the fin. An estimated 2,000 litres of seawater flooded down the conning tower into the submarine control room. Immediate cleanup of the water and inspection for damage was ordered. Almost instantaneously, electrical earths were detected in the electrical system, and a repair team was tasked to isolate electrical circuits to detect the sources of the earths. The commanding officer's cabin is located next to the conning tower. Crew members estimated there were 4 inches of water in the cabin and another 2 inches on the deck of the control room. About 2 hours later, a fire broke out in the commanding officer's cabin and quickly spread to an electrical station below. Within seconds, much of the submarine was engulfed in thick black smoke. The fire was eventually contained, but 9 crew members suffered smoke inhalation, while 6 were able to return to duty. 3 suffered more severe injuries. Chicoutimi's medical assistant decided the 3 should be evacuated as soon as possible, but the commanding officer determined that the weather and sea conditions were too hazardous to attempt an immediate transfer by boat or helicopter. Under the commanding officer's bunk were several high-powered DC cables at deck level to the rear of the cabin. During the flood, these were immersed in 4 inches of seawater. This would have been hidden from view by the crew unless they removed a panel to inspect. The crew were aware of the cables, but not significantly concerned, as they had been insulated to protect against such a known event. They did not suspect that the earths were a result of the DC cable being immersed in water and that the insulation was already failing. Approximately 2 hours after the event, the insulation around the cables catastrophically failed, causing a large DC short circuit, resulting in an electrical explosion that vaporized the damaged cables. By design, the battery breakers tripped to protect the batteries, leaving them charged but isolated from the main electrical distribution system, cutting all power, including the lighting and communication system. This uncontrolled release of heat and subsequent energy, caused by the DC short, were the ignition sources for the fire. The explosive force of the DC shot also breached the commanding officer's cabin deck, and fire quickly spread to an electrical station below. Within seconds, much of the submarine was engulfed in thick black smoke, making the control room and conning tower untenable. It took approximately 20 minutes to extinguish the fires in the commanding officer's cabin and electrical station. The conning upper and lower hatches were opened by necessity to try and ventilate and clear smoke from the boat, and to permit the crew access to the bridge to allow for communication using the VHF radio and portable satellite telephone. After some effort and ingenuity, the starboard diesel engine is restarted to help clear atmosphere and provide ancillary power. The smoke remained in the control room for almost 3 hours. This event, like many other accidents, is rarely down to a single failure or occurrence. It is often a combination of failures of engineering or administrative controls, design failure, and/or human error that are eroded over a period of time, and if not managed, eventually leads to the accident. If we apply the accident etiology to the sequence of events, we can see more clearly how the incident arose and how to apply control measures. The submarine was operating on the surface in rough waters transiting to the dive location. En route, the upper conning tower hatch vent valve was identified as defective and required maintenance before the dive could commence. The corrective maintenance was undertaken with the conning tower opened up, providing a direct route for water to enter the control room. Some level of seawater is expected to enter a submarine, and as such, procedures are in place to remove the water, and any electrical cables are sufficiently insulated and located away from areas that may trap water. On the Chicoutimi, the insulation was not sufficient, and the trapped seawater came into contact with the electrical power cables, causing earth faults on the system. These faults were in the process of being traced, using earth monitoring system and isolation procedures, when the further breakdown of the insulation under the commanding officer's bunk resulted in a large DC short circuit, the ignition source for the fire. To reduce the impact of a fire, the Chicoutimi had portable firefighting equipment available, emergency breathing system, medical supplies, and casualty evacuation procedures. Due to the speed the fire developed, the large amounts of smoke rendering visibility to zero, the immediate loss of power, and the rough sea, the conditions of the Chicoutimi were very extreme. This had a detrimental effect on the existing control barriers. These barriers were only partially successful, and the speed of response and efficiency of the firefighting equipment were not sufficient to avert the loss of life and injury to crew. The Chicoutimi extinguished the fire, but required the external medical assistance and support in recovering the submarine to a safe port. The Canadian government calls the disaster the darkest hours in the history of Canadian submarine service.